Welcome to the Diabetic Mogul podcast. In this podcast, we offer standard and recommended practice of not only managing your diabetes well, but how you can get involved in advocating for proper access to healthcare. Join us in this season as we host various guests within the diabetes community from around the world, both from people sharing from their lived experiences as people living with diabetes and healthcare providers. I'm your host, Tino Tendazigid, a patient advocate, a Toastmaster, and a financial intelligence expert with the vision of empowering, educate, inspire the diabetes community in the best way I know how. And to do this, I write articles as a way to pay it forward and host a podcast. And I encourage you all to get involved, get engaged, and come up together to create the change that we need. Glad to have you on this podcast show, Professor. I must confess, your reputation precedes you. May you kindly introduce yourself to the audience?
Absolutely. I mean, very, very kind words, man. But so my name is Partha. Full name is Partha Kar. I'm a consultant or a specialist in diabetes based in the UK and a place called Portsmouth. And I've got a wider role beyond what I do as a clinician. I have a national role in leading type 1 diabetes care and other issues in diabetes as well. So that's my job.
Quite brief. This is great. All right. So, Professor, now that the audience now knows you, who you are, and what you do, if you could briefly describe the status quo of diabetes care in the UK.
So, diabetes care in the UK is not doing too badly. And that's been due to many, many years of investment into certain areas. So, we've got a very clear policy and as to what is done under general practice. We pay general practitioners or our GPs, as we call them, to do basic checks. Then we also have sort of programs which are looking at improving foot care. We're looking at programs which are improving safety inside hospitals. And of course, there are big sort of moves to sort of make technology more accessible to people with type 1 diabetes. And finally, beyond the world of type 1 diabetes, we also have in type 2 diabetes big national programs trying to help with education and, of course, trying to help with prevention of type 2 diabetes. So lots and lots of work going on with diabetes. And we've got some outcomes which are also improving over the course of time. Our cardiovascular disease has gone down, amputations have gone down. So, lots of challenges in the pandemic have come through. But in general, we tend to do reasonably well. So that's which is good news as well, I think.
Wow, this is great. Great to know and great to learn how other communities are doing, especially for us. It's actually the opposite. We are doing quite bad. And I'm hoping that sooner we would have to learn from you the things that you are doing as a community and as an organization with all the organizations that you're working with.
I was just going to say, we're always open for anybody who would like to ask or want something. It's available, it's for free. So we do work with other countries where needed. We can pass on our tips, we can pass on our lessons, things that don't work and all that. So whoever's interested, please do let us know.
I thought we'd never ask. This is amazing. All right. Okay. So speaking of your career path, you're a renowned person now, a co-lead consultant. I don't know if you may share with us exactly what made you to want to work in the diabetes care and everything, diabetes medicine and technology.
First of all, it's a training that I did, so, I've got different ways of looking at it. One is I obviously chose diabetes because it was a specialty which always attracted me when I was training. And I had some great mentors in life early on in my career, and they sort of guided me towards diabetes. You become a part of the journey of somebody's life, which is nice. And then I do my clinical work where I am. So I try and get the best care I possibly can. Doesn't always work, of course, but, you try as much as you know, as much as you can. And beyond that, in the world of policy, what I do, I feel it is my role and responsibility to battle with the system, to try and find out what else we need to do to get more people access to my particular area, obviously, is around technology. And I spend a lot of time trying to convince people, trying to get the data, working with all the people concerned so that you've got more and more people getting technology. And we have been quite fortunate in that regards. Lots of things have happened. Lots of things have fallen in place, which is fantastic. It's been a great journey. It's been a great journey, and I've enjoyed it. I still enjoy it. I think it's part of my role. It's part of my job to do so, and having fun while you're doing it is important. So yeah, that's me.
Wow, you're greatly passionate about this and everything about it. I asked myself to say, is Professor Partha Kar diabetic? Because his great passion is unmatched, and so many people do follow you because of that. We have seen you speak in conferences, and it's on the platform. People would just say, oh, wow, he knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's saying, which is great. So thank you so much in all that you do. Now, considering about the inequality in healthcare, so who do you see as the most disempowered community in the world?
It's very difficult for people with any chronic disease and I think that's how systems are set up, to have a voice, which is where I think our roles are. As clinicians who are there in the system, we have the advantage. And I genuinely say this to all my clinical colleagues, that our job should be to sort of push for the rights of people who don't necessarily have the voice. Be the voice is what I say. So people tend to get very disempowered, understandably, frequently because they try and they don't get anywhere. And without that support, it gets very frustrating. That's not surprising. But if you want to empower them, that's where you need to give the support from the clinical side as well. So that's what I believe. What you do see as well, that the ethnicity has a bearing about your voice. Deprivation has a bearing as to what voice you have. So all these sort of combine together. And then you have a variety of people who've got different levels of engagement with the system or not. That becomes our role. For example, if you come from a community that doesn't necessarily have a voice, how do you as a clinical leader try and raise that voice, try and help people to sort of come out and say, look, I'm not getting the care I should be getting, or I'm not getting the care at the same level as somebody else. That sort of stuff is our job as well. So that's probably the way I personally approach it.
Oh, thank you, Prof. And with all the inspiration and the encouragement that you give to the other healthcare providers that you work, and I wish that we could also have people like you in our communities who would also do things like that, because there are very few people that are passionate about this. Then you ask yourself, why is he doing what is he doing if he isn't really convinced with what he's saying? Because in our community, you can actually see that for people that are living with type 1 diabetes, they can be prescribed medication that is meant for type 2 only, like tablets, metformin, and then you'd wonder, but then you do not have any say because you're not a doctor, so you just let it be. So thank you so much. How can those people be reached so that their care can be improved, considering that the end goal for diabetes care especially is for better quality of life that is being done from those empowered communities like the ones in the UK? So what can we do to reach out to those other communities that are disempowered?
I think it's very important that we recognize, first of all, it's important to recognize that why people need to recognize there are people who are nowhere at the level of everybody else. So for example, we talk about people who come from, let's say, the Black community or background. They don't necessarily have the same level of care as people who are white. And that needs to be discussed. That needs to be very open. People should not shy away from that conversation. That's not to turn around and say that every carer is a racist, but I think people need to understand how, people need to be brave enough to talk about. You can't talk about inequalities if you're not brave enough to may have the main discussion, which is some of it could be down to bias in the healthcare professionals themselves. Now, the first part of that is acceptance. There's a problem. Then you try and correct it. Then you have data to show light where the issues are. So I think if you want to raise the profile of people who come from a background which is deprived, I think first of all is acceptance that there is a problem, that we're not doing the same for everybody. Once you get that acceptance from the clinical community, you then have data to show, look, this is the problem area. Then you try and meet with those people. There is no point in a group of, let's say, South Asian people trying to give a solution as to what could be better care for somebody from the Black community. It doesn't make any sense. You need people from the Black community to tell us, okay, these are our challenges, these are the diet issues, these are the issues that we are facing, the stigma, this is different for us. So how do you tackle that? So that's the nature of way you have acceptance, you have data to confirm it, and then you move towards and engage with the people who are themselves going through it, and then you change it. So that's the way I would say we approach these issues, rather than, our way of sometimes challenging even the fact that people are deprived. No, it's all okay for everybody. Well, if you haven't accepted the main problem, then you won't make progress.
Indeed. Thank you so much. So now, Prof, let's get maybe a bit more personal. To say, if you could change one thing about diabetes care, what would you change?
I would probably change the way healthcare professionals have been trained. I think a lot of the training is very medicalized, and I think our job is less medical and more about being a guide, and I don't think we necessarily have the skill in that. So I think I would probably change that. I would change how clinicians interact with people living with diabetes, and that little moment that we have, we make it very precious, so people with diabetes walk away with better knowledge, better understanding, and feel more supported. That's the bit I would probably change. And I think if we did that, then I suspect overall care would improve as well. That would be my view.
Oh, this is legendary. It'll be impactful in us, the patients, when you relate to us, the things that we need when you're addressing those issues that we are facing. Because basically for us, for a year, maybe we might only get to see our doctors maybe thrice, something like that. Now, with regards to the greater contribution of NHS within the diabetes community, kindly shed more light on the Get It Right First Time, the initiative that you've just started, in terms of its role. Can it benefit the international community?
Yeah, I think the Getting Right First Time is simply what it is. It's trying to look at what we call variation. So you'll have one hospital having one standard of care, the other one having other standard of care. So what we're trying to do is look at the areas and say, hey, listen, you seem to be falling behind others. So for example, one of the things that we did was look at which areas had what we call self-management guidelines. So if you came into hospital, you could look after yourself. You're well, your insulin was handled by yourself. And those are the things we're looking at. And we are saying to everybody, this is a minimal standard which will make you a good diabetes center. And if that is the case, we need to do better at it. So our job has been very much doing that, and it can be replicated anywhere, really. What you're saying is that here are the minimal standards of good diabetes care, and this is what we would expect all hospitals to be able to do. And as a result of which, we then go around, we look at the data, we look at this, and we talk to them about it. So, and then you try and implement those guidelines or whatever it may be to get there. So that's what I would say is the getting it right first time, is making sure we are getting there or not. Yeah, that's what it is.
Thank you. Thank you so much for all these initiatives that you're bringing up as NHS. I mean, with among the contributions that you're already doing or putting in our community. Now, considering how successful we have been in getting the CGMs, the freestyle liver to improve the diabetes care in UK within your community, how can the communities from the low to middle income country get such diabetes technology available? Because so many of us have been keen enough to have access to this diabetes tech, but we do not have access to them. What can we do?
I think a lot of it is about down to the companies as well. So I think as more companies will come up with better products, I think companies need to reach out, and that's our job as well, to say to companies, what are you doing for the lower middle income countries? You can't have differential care throughout the world. I have the same problems. I work in India. So what can we do working with the governments? What can we do as a company to say, here are what we can offer is a better deal to have more technology available. So not at the cost price at which, for example, it would be affordable in Europe or States, and you're looking at other areas, you go into Africa, you go to other parts of India. What can we do to do that? You need the government, you need the policymakers to sit down with industry and go, right, this is the level of population we have. These are the groups of people who would like to benefit from. How do you do it? Especially based on their income. Because with some people who can afford it, fine. But if they can't, then how do you move it to them? And I think that's a very, very important debate. And I think this is where international organizations are trying to work together to make sure that's available. I think we should do that far better than what we're doing at the present moment of time.
Thank you so much. And I'm pretty sure that maybe sooner, because not everyone cannot fit in the cost, but then if they are way too much above the threshold of what the basic salaries people are getting, then it wouldn't work really. But then people, they've been complaining to say, when can we get this? We've been seeing people with this technology, like their contribution is great. Hopefully soon I would get access to them anyway. May you please guide us? Why is it that they are, to say that the clinical recommendation, they suggest that all diagnostic criteria for all types of diabetes to be based on laboratory measurements, whereas most communities, they conduct diabetes screening using glucometers through finger pricks only. So please guide us on this one. Why is this the case, or what changed?
I think a lot of it is dictated by what's possible and what's not possible because of financial reasons, right? That's the main reason. So whenever guidelines change, I think you came back to the last question, and I think what you do find, international guidelines tend to reflect what's possible and what's not possible, right? And there's no point in, I've always said this before, and I've said this about NICE as well, when we did this in the UK, there's no point in producing a guideline nobody can implement, right? So you need to produce a guideline which people can actually put in place. So when you have these changes of guidelines, I think it's important that it's reflective of what governments and people can do. So yes, it's very good sometimes to set a really high bar and say, this is what we want the system to do. But if the system can't afford it, so for example, if you turn around and say, hey, listen, everybody with type 1 diabetes in the whole world should have access to, let's say, a flash glucose monitor. But you go to a country where most people can't even eat, right? Or have 2 meals a day. So in that case, you're going like, well, that's a lovely guideline, but nobody can get there. That's a bit like me saying, I go for a run, but I would like to be Usain Bolt. I can't. That's a stupid guideline, right? That's a stupid aim. So you've got to have something which is reflective of what local systems can do. So I think what you're getting is you've got a mixture of things, which is, okay, here's the basic, and here is something we can aspire to be, but it's not completely out of reach. So I think that's why you have a mixture when these guidelines come out. You're trying to balance all the countries and the needs and everything. That's where it comes through.
I don't know what to say. So thank you so much for putting this into perspective on how it should be related. Yeah, this should be something that should be relatable to say, can this be implemented in this country, rather than just giving in recommendation that cannot even be implemented. So which is great. So
then you lose faith. You lose faith, and then nothing happens. That's the problem. Then you have absolutely no idea what to do.
Definitely. And people wouldn't even listen to you because they say everything that you recommend is based on the things that you can do as a country, but then you cannot say it should be international when we cannot relate. So many things have to be put into perspective whenever guidelines are put, so that people will be guided, because the end goal is to improve the quality of care, right?
Totally.
Wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So how can schools uphold the students' rights to safely attend the school while enabling the student to experience equal opportunities and obtaining equal education in participation with equal activities with other peers?
So I think, again, it's about education a lot. So I think if you make type 1 diabetes into a part and parcel of people's life and you make people understand, then everybody around them are prepared for the issues that make things, for a want of a better word, stand out. So, for example, a child goes to school and they've got, let's say, technology, you make it, or they have to take their insulin, then you make it very clear that that's part and parcel of their life to keep them alive. And you make it like an education session. Kids are kids. So you just need to explain it to them in a way whereby it's very attractive to people to understand. For example, you use comic books, you talk about, well, it could be, it's maybe a bit like a superpower. So you need to have these medication to make sure you're okay. You need to go to the language that people understand. So what then happens that the child with type 1 diabetes doesn't feel left out, doesn't feel victimized or stigmatized. And teachers will have a massive role in that, in making sure they're very welcome, that it's part of life, and giving examples of people who've got type 1 diabetes who've done amazingly well in their lives and saying, look, he had type 1, but look at what he's achieved in life, whether it's a footballer, whether it's a cricketer, whether it's a politician, whether it's a, whatever, so many people, singer, and you say, this is what they can grow up to be. So you make school environments much more safer environments, making normalizing type 1 diabetes part of life, then also educating the children as to how they can look after their friends if they're a hypo, how to look after them, what is a jelly baby, sweets, etc. So you can make it very, very interactive rather than what I call medicalizing it, which makes it very scary for a lot of people. And if you did that, the child feels happier, the people feel happier, they feel a bit part of the system and society, and they can go and have a good, enjoyable college life and school life. So that would be my approach as to how you want to go about it, I would say.
Prof, we don't know what to say or how to thank you for your contributions. They are positive, straight to the point, very precise. It's amazing. And I'm pretty sure that this podcast is going to be one of the best. People are going to love it. So moving on, what are your last words to the audience? There are healthcare providers, there are people living with diabetes, caregivers, and significant others. What would be your last word?
So I think I'll probably split it. I think for caregivers or people who live with type 1 diabetes, I would say keep the faith. There's a lot of things going on. Sometimes it's difficult. Sometimes the day-to-day doesn't feel like it. And it's a very, very tough space to be in, which I fully appreciate. I don't have it, but I see it every single day. And I know it's tough. It's not easy, but there is hope. There is faith. They always have to keep it. You can look at people, what they've achieved in life. There are a lot of people working to try and get the right technology and the right insulin, everything to you, keeping in mind all the financial issues, etc., which is why I again appeal to governments and everybody to have that part to play in. To healthcare professionals, I always say only one thing: be nice, be kind, be appreciative of the problems that the person with type 1 diabetes is going through. You don't have it. In the 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes you'll have with them, just be nice. Doesn't take much. Make people feel that they're not being judged or going through an exam, and your passion to improve their care should not result in them feeling bad about themselves. It's not an exam. So they live with it all the time. Just be nice. That's it. That's my message to everybody.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prof, for the greatest contribution. I thought this interview was going to take maybe 90 minutes. I wanted to ask you every question. It is a great honor for me to have you in this podcast.
Huge thanks to our legendary Professor Partha Kar for being our guest on this exclusive podcast. We are forever grateful towards someone who is greatly passionate in what he or she does. And for Professor Partha Kar, he is extremely passionate, and his involvement in diabetes care is unmatched. And we cannot thank him enough for being our guest. Special thanks goes to the Diabetic Mogul podcast audience for their unwavering support as always. And a big shout out goes to all our previous guests: Julia, Livonia, Sarah, Dawn, Dr. Machkanga, Chelsea, Ashley, Jennifer, Leila, and Professor Partha Kar. Thank you so much.